Joseph LALUMIA, World War II. Corporal Joseph LALUMIA served in the United States Army during World War II with the 777th Anti-Aircraft Battalion. He later served with General Patton's 3rd Army, 6th Armored Division. He was with the anti-aircraft support and his group downed over 120 enemy planes during World War II. Joe also fought at the Battle of the Bulge. I had the great pleasure of interviewing Joe in Independence, Missouri, June 29, 2007, and his story is one of my favorite stories, and he was a good-looking, handsome man during World War II. This story is being made possible by a grant from Angela Cook, Joe's granddaughter. Thank you, Angela. If you are interested in sponsoring one of these stories, please contact me. The information is in the video description. And now it is with great pride, joy, and pleasure I present to you Joseph LALUMIA.
How old were you then? Help me with the math.
I was 18.
Okay. You drafted?
Right.
Army?
Army.
Can you tell me what infantry, regiment, division you were with? Give me the whole thing over in Europe.
We started out as 777 anti-aircraft, and when we landed in D-Day, we were switched over to the 3rd Army, 6th Armored Division.
Okay. And was that under Patton?
Under General Patton.
Okay. So what was your job in the military? Are you rifleman or?
Fighting anti-aircraft support.
Okay.
Our outfit downed 126 planes.
When were you over? Were you over in Europe staging for the D-Day invasion over in England?
Yes.
What?
Our first mission in England was firing at buzz bombs, being launched from Germany to London, and we was shooting at them buzz bombs. What we call them buzz bombs.
Over in England.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before D-Day.
Now, when you went in D-Day, did you go in the first day?
Second day.
So D-Day +1?
Yeah.
Just give me a little bit what you remember about the landing, if you got into a small landing craft from an LST, or and which beach you went into?
We went in Omaha Beach, LST, flat bottom, and we drove off with our half track. And they hadn't advanced too far. They were having a lot of trouble with pillboxes, and see, the pillboxes had 18 feet concrete tops on them where the bombers couldn't touch them. So they finally had to get them out with flamethrowers.
And did you witness any of that? Did you see any of that going on? Or?
Yes.
What do you remember about your actual landing? Now, you drove off of an LST with a half track, you said?
Right. There was no opposition then, because they had went forward maybe 2 or 3 blocks off of the beach.
But describe to me what you saw when you landed on that beach. The
I
destruction.
saw several bodies in the water. There's still bodies in the water. You could see officers with their bars on their shoulders.
In the water?
Yes.
Had you ever been in combat like that before, or is that the first time that you really had gotten into a combat situation?
First time.
Do you feel like you're bulletproof? Do you feel invincible when you're young like that?
Well, they always said I laughed a lot when we got into a tough situation. I just got the giggles. And I think that helped me get through it.
Do you think your training got you through the hard times, or your faith, or what do you think got you through the hard times?
My faith.
So when you got onto Omaha Beach, what was your job? What was your objective?
We just went forward until we were issued out to different outfits like tanks, TDs, infantry, and our mission was if the planes came down and strafed, our job was to try to keep them off of them.
Now let's jump ahead a little bit, a few months, into the time of the Battle of the Bulge. What do you remember about that? And do you know why they called it the Battle of the Bulge?
Sure don't.
How about at the time? What part of the country were you in? Were you in Belgium, Germany? Where were you at during the Battle of the Bulge?
Probably in Germany.
Tell me what you remember about going in and the type of combat and your actual experience of what you did.
Well, when I heard on the radio where we was to spearhead to Bastogne to help the 101st Airborne that was trapped in there. See, they parachuted in there, and when they dropped down, when they landed, they were surrounded by Germans, and they couldn't move. So we got the orders to join the tank outfit and spearhead there to get to them, and they had a lot of trench feet, and it's pitiful. It was awful to witness.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that when you say the casualties, or they're talking about the 101st Airborne guys?
Yes.
And they were bringing them back, evacuating them, or what were they doing?
Well, when we spearheaded two of them, they didn't have no food, no rations, no ammunition or nothing. And the Germans, I understand that they took a lot of the clothing, the American clothing, and a lot of them, they had so many clothes on that they said when the Americans shot at them, the bullets didn't even pierce their clothing.
What can you tell me about the Germans, the type of soldier they were, and the resistance that you guys met?
Well, towards the end, they were surrendering from everywhere. In other words, they would call our half-track to come up and spray the woods with 50 caliber machine guns, and they'd come out of them woods carrying white flags, and they were just surrendering left and right, and their Air Force was nothing like ours, nothing. They would strafe us, and they would stay way up high, and we could almost catch the bullets in our hand, because that's kind of. But our Air Force, I think, brought us through it.
Now, what was your actual job again? What did you actually do?
Well, if we was with the infantry, they would call us to come up. They were going through a town they wanted to liberate. They would call us up there and shoot at steeples where a sniper might have been in a church steeple or something. And we'd just get up there and start spraying that steeple, or else call for artillery.
And you're with a group of men, a platoon, or what?
Well, we was there's usually a section of, like Battery B, Section 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think I was in Section 2. And our half-track had 450 calibers, and the other half-track had a 37 millimeter and two 50s on it. And several times they used us for different things. But we was with the tanks a lot, the tank destroyers. And I think we was 3 miles or 4 miles from Berlin when it ended.
So are you sitting in the half-track, or are you outside of the half-track?
Inside the half-track.
All the time?
Yeah, they had 1/4-inch armor on it. And everybody on the track had to be able to drive, shoot, load, and everything.
So what's happening out around the half-track? You got infantry behind you, in front of you, or what?
Well, if we was with tanks, we would be in a convoy with tanks. If we was in TDs, tank destroyers, we would be in a convoy with them. And they issued us out to whoever needed, any aircraft support.
Can you describe, though, Joe, the combat that you remember witnessing and being around as you're in the Battle of the Bulge? I mean, what are you in a town? Are you out in the field? Where are you at?
Well, we never did do any hand-to-hand combat. We would fire our guns at whatever like the steeple or the woods or planes, and we never did do any hand-to-hand combat. But we had to qualify to shoot the M1 and all this.
So your targets are buildings, basically, or?
Well, buildings, whatever they wanted us to do. A lot of times we'd hear on our radio, send them half-tracks up here, and we want them wood sprayed. So we'd get up there and back into the woods and just spray the heck out of it with our 450s and a 37, and they'd come out with their white flags surrendering. And then we took a lot of prisoners, but we just sent them in a field, and then they brought them back later.
What time of year was the Battle of the Bulge? Like the fall, winter?
It was winter. It was cold.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the cold and how that affected you.
We never took our shoes off for 2 weeks. We just slept in a little pup tent, or a lot of times we'd dig a foxhole and cover it over with pine needle branches, and then your body kept you warm in there.
And that went on for weeks and weeks?
No, as soon as we got them out, we traveled on. See, we ended up with six campaign ribbons, because we moved around so much. And
well, tell me about some of the campaigns. I mean, give me some details.
it was so fast. It happened so fast. It was 60 years ago. She's got a lot of it in that book that she got over the internet.
Well, just tell me what you remember, though, about what you went through as far as the cold. Were men getting frostbite? Did you get frostbite?
We wasn't there that long. We just kept moving. Once they got freed out of there, then we moved on. And we was spearheading. We was going to Berlin, and I think we were 3 or 4 miles from Berlin when it actually ended. And the Russians wouldn't let us go into Berlin because they had got from went in from the other side, and all the guys says, let's go in and kick them out. Let's go on in there and run them out.
What about did you lose any friends, wounded or killed?
I lost my best friend.
Can you tell me what happened? Or where you were?
We went back in the field to rest, and I went to visit him at his gun position, his half-track position, and he had a hole dug, and they started throwing artillery in on us. So I started running around with him, and he says, my hole ain't big enough for both of us. So I jumped under the half-track, and he went in his hole. So they threw these shells in on us, and after it was all over, I asked where Odell was, and they said he went around the other side of the half-track. I went around there, and a shell followed him in his hole and blew him off from waist down. And his watch was still running. He was on his stomach, and his watch was still running. That was one of my best friends. Then we had another guy that he'd jump up on a half-track and was firing at planes with his fingers because he couldn't take it no more. They sent him home with a Section 8. Then we heard a lot of time on the radio, Axis Sally. We understand she was a blonde German, and we'd hear on our radio several times, you GIs better give up because you lost your commander-in-chief. That's when President Roosevelt died. And he said, we will take care of you, we'll get you back home safe. And you know what we said.
Tell me, though.
It just...
I can edit it out. Go ahead and tell me.
Go to hell, or we heard on our radio. They could get to us on our radio, but they couldn't hear anything that we were discussing because there was a certain thing they could cut out on it, so they couldn't hear what we were saying.
And you call that? What was the gal's name you would refer to her as?
Axis Sally.
Is that kind of like Berlin Betty? Same type of propaganda type thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, she knew, boy. She says, you lost your commander-in-chief. You GIs better give up.
So, you talk about these friends that you lost. At the time, is there a time for remorse, or does that come later?
And then I forgot another very close friend. Our first sergeant made battlefield commission. He made second lieutenant, battlefield commission. The next day, we're going up the superhighway, and we get strafed, and they're dropping bombs, and the shell got the whole top of his head off. He won the lieutenant over one day. Prince of a fella from Louisiana, our first sergeant, and then he made battlefield commission.
Were you there when that happened?
Yes, I was in the convoy, but I didn't get to see him. He was in headquarters up ahead.
Do you remember where you were the Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve of 1944 during the Battle of the Bulge time? Do you remember?
I really don't. She's got a pretty walk. See, they used to ask me, where did you go after you left when you got Omaha? I says, you know, we moved so fast through different towns. I remember some of them, St. Lo, and one of the pictures there says, you're now entering Germany through the courtesy of the 6th Armored Division. And I just can't remember all the places we were.
Tell me again, you were with which armored division?
We was with the 6th Armored Division, 3rd Army, General Patton.
Yeah.
And he came up there in his light tank too, boy. He's right up there.
Tell me what you remember about that.
I just remember when they called for us to go up there and spray these woods, we went up there and there he was, right at the edge of the woods in his medium tank with his silver helmet, his pearl handle guns. And he was right up there.
Did they shoot him?
No. But he come up there, you could see that old shiny helmet come up out of that.
Well, how did you guys feel when he was around? Did you feel good? Did you feel like, was he a good guy? Was he-
Sure, but he had the thing of our blood in his guts. I guess you've heard that before. That's what went around a lot about General Patton.
Blood and guts.
Yeah, and we heard that. But he was a good man, I thought.
You said our blood and his guts. Was that the phrase, blood and guts? Is that
Yes,
what,
yes.
It was your blood.
Our blood in his guts. He had guts enough to send you somewhere. He didn't care if it was your blood or not. But he wanted to get things done. I guess that's the way he did it.
Did you ever get to hear him talk in a group or anything like that?
No.
Or, did you guys?
Did you watch the Patton? Patton?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was every bit of that.
Yeah. Good movie. Yeah. So what about the camaraderie that you guys had? Was there a lot of closeness with each other, or did you make friends?
Well, outside. See, when we was issued out to different places. Now there was our squad and another squad. We were pretty close together because they sent us to the same place. But rest of the outfit, they went other ways, other places, and I might mention that there was a priest there that needed somebody to help him serve mass, and he asked if anybody knew Latin, serve mass in Latin. I said, yeah, I did. So I went with him maybe 2 or 3 weeks to have mass in the field. And when my outfit was going to ship out, he asked me if I wanted to stay with him. And I said, no, I don't believe so. I want to go with the guys. So if I'd have stayed with him, I don't know where I ended up.
Did you get to help any of the wounded, or were the medics just doing that?
No, the medics were doing that.
Can you tell me if there were a lot of casualties, or were there just a few, or were there a whole bunch?
Well, when we were spearheading, we going through towns and things. Yeah, there was guys, snipers was getting different people, and they could call for artillery 5 miles away, and they could give you support with that.
Were there any air support going on during this time from the Americans?
Yes. Our main objective too was to learn the Messerschmitt and the Focke-Wulf 190 and Messerschmitt 101 was identical as our Thunderbolt 47 and our Mustang P51. They were so much alike that we really had to study before we fired.
Make sure it was the right plane, huh?
Mm-hmm. And then one time they were putting a bridge, I think, across the Rhine River, and they brought us down there to give air support. So we was in a ravine, and we had half tracks on both sides of the ravine because they would come down the ravine and try to take the bridge out. So we heard on our radio, "Do not fire! Enemy planes approaching the area. Do not fire!" Because they was going to come right down the ravine, and we was going to shoot across the ravine at each other. So we let him go in there, and you could see the pilot in the plane. But
were you shooting down planes with your half track? Was that part of what you did?
yes, yes.
And
And actually, when they strafed up high, what we would do was we would set up a barrage. We'd just set straight up and let them fly through it, because if they come down low, they were going so fast our turret wouldn't turn fast enough. So we just set up a barrage and let them fly through it. We downed a lot of them.
what kind of a caliber machine gun are you shooting? Or
50 caliber. There's 450s on the half track, 800 per minute out of each gun.
so tell me what you're doing when the plane's coming in. Are you sighting it in? Are you, I mean, you leading it? How do you? What do you?
You had a Mark Navy 9 sight in the turret, and it lit up and it had circles, and then you'd pick him up, and then you'd fire ahead of him because the bullets were going to go into him. But it got to where they were, so we just set up a barrage and they flew through it and downed them.
So you shot down planes.
Yes, our whole outfit was credited with 128.
Did you personally get credit for any of those, or is it just the outfit?
No, nobody did. It's just, they set up a barrage, like 3 tracks were there, and they all 3 set up a barrage. We don't know what gun really downed them. They flew through and then later they come out with the jet plane. They had jet plane, and you couldn't touch them. I mean, they're just too fast.
Were you ever awarded a Bronze Star, Silver Star, anything like that? Okay. Just want to make sure, because if you were, I wanted to hear about that. But tell me about, now, when I say, were you in the Battle of the Bulge, you say yes. So is that the end of 44 into 45? Is that it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But,
Did you go through any cities when you're...
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We went through a lot of them, but I just
You
can't.
don't need to remember the names, but was there a lot of destruction and rubble?
Oh yeah, it was.
Tell me about-
They were flattened out. A lot of them were flattened out, and some of them were. There were still some Germans left in some of them, and they were up at steeples sniping, and they would tell us there's a sniper up in that steeple, and we'd lower the boom on that steeple, and if we didn't do it, then we'd call for artillery, and then they'd have a forward observer up there. They could put that shell in your pocket if they wanted to, and they'd blow it up.
Tell me what your thoughts were about Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and what he was trying to do.
Rule the world, and we heard that he was in woods in a cabin in the woods there. So we spearheaded up there, and we got up there and they started bombing and shelling it, and they blew that cabin all to heck. And we always said that he wasn't in there. He had too many people looking like him. He wasn't in there, but the word was out that he was in them woods there in that cabin. But
What about the German soldier? I mean, do you think he valued life like you guys did, or did you just...
the SS troops were the worst. The SS troops, they wouldn't take a prisoner. They wouldn't take no paratroopers, and a lot of the French showed us a cemetery where a lot of the pilots were buried, and then we saw them dig them up. They weren't in the ground too long. They still had their bars on their shoulder and everything.
What'd they do with them when they dug them up? What do you mean?
They just sent them back, and
Oh, okay.
they took the dog tag off.
Do you ever think about these guys? I mean, the ones that you lost, is that... you ever think
Yeah,
about
it bothered me for the first 4 or 5 years I was home, but then it was kind of rough with this one kid that got killed.
The one you told me about?
Uh-huh. We hung around all together in Chicago, and we done our training at Fort Sheridan, Illinois. And we run around together a lot.
You ever wonder why you survived and you came back?
Yeah. When it's your time to go, you'll go. Because I had several close calls, very close.
Did you tell me about them, or can you tell me about them?
Yeah, there was this one particular place. We had what they call a slit trench, where you used for your when you had to move your bowels and so forth. So for 2 or 3 mornings, I'd go down there. And the one morning I said, the guy says, don't you have to go to use the latrine down there? And I said, no, I just don't feel like I have to. Just about that time, they strafed the hell out of us there, and they tore that place all to heck, was strafing it and doing bombs. And so I said, well, it wasn't my time to go. I'd have been down there. That's my theory. All the time I was over there, when it's your time to go, I think wherever you was at, you was going to go.
Joe, can you define combat for me? If you had to give it a definition, how would you define combat?
Rough, very rough.
And do you think a young man grows up fast when the bullets start flying?
Yeah, yep.
So you're going through probably Belgium, Germany, you push into Germany.
France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany.
Were you guys conscious of the fact that the war is going to end soon, or how did you feel about that?
Well, towards the end there, we knew that the way they were surrendering, that they had all they wanted. They had all they wanted, and they was coming out from everywhere with white flags on the stick, and they just had all they wanted. But they had a tank that they had an 88 on the tank, and they blew our turrets clear off of the bodies. That's how powerful their 88 was. So then I think we had a 90 millimeter on our tanks, but we witnessed a lot of tank fights. We were on the edge, giving them anti-aircraft support, but we couldn't do nothing when they started firing them tanks at each other. And the TDs were a lot of help to us. We'd get stuck in the mud and they'd pull us out.
Can you tell me anything about the German tanks, what they were and how deadly they were?
Like I said, that 88 on that Tiger tank was awful. It was something.
And the Tiger was the main.
A Tiger tank.
And were the Panzers?
Panzers. Ours was Sherman.
Wow, were they better tanks than our Sherman?
No, they just had that 88 on there made them better. So I don't know what they did to help that along, but the Americans come out. I think they had a lighter gun on our tanks. They had then they come out with the 90 millimeter on it, and then they compared to their 88. But we also seen where these big guns and where they were launching to the boats out in the channel, and they finally got to them and bombed them out.
What was the hardest part of your job, Joe, over there, with what you had to do?
The hardest part was
Tough question, huh?
yeah.
Was it all tough, or was there a particular battle that was tougher, or situation?
No, it's just like I said, we didn't get off the half track and do hand-to-hand combat. We stayed on the half track, and we would. A lot of times we pulled in the field one time and they had to zero it in. They had the field zeroed in, and you know what I mean by zeroing in. They figured, well, if Americans go in this field, we got to zero it in. All we have to do is just start shooting in that field. And we got in there, and one would hit this side of the track, one would hit this side of the track, and we kept hollering at the driver to move. Every time one hit by close to the track, move. And the shrapnel was going up in the air and coming down in the tank, and it was like rain. But that was the rough part too. And they had a gun called Screaming Mimis that it got on your nerves. It took a lot of stuff out of you. That I don't know. They'd shoot they had maybe 10, 15 tubes, and they shoot them all at once, and they just screamed coming in the air. And just like the one guy said, the color guy was in the foxhole, and he says, did you hear that? And he said, yeah, I heard it. And he said, what did it say? You ain't going back to Alabama. But it was, but they always said I had the giggles when, I don't know why, but I just started giggling, and they thought I was crazy, I guess.
Do you think what you guys fought for in World War II, do you think our country's forgetting or we're losing that today?
I don't think so. I don't. They like, I've got all kind of ribbons from Jefferson City. They sent me, and you know, they praised you for being in the war and everything. I think we were highly recognized.
What do you think our country should remember about World War II?
Well, they had a lot of guys in there that lost their lives, you know, and they were heroes. The guys on that beach that had that first wave. We were fortunate enough we didn't have to make the first wave, but we could see it in England the morning they took off. You know, they canceled it 3 days. They canceled the D-Day for 3 days, and finally he gave the okay, and the channel was rougher than hell when we went across it. That LST was just like a cork on the water, and a lot of them did get sick. But we didn't make that first wave. They were pretty well had softened up the beach. But the pillboxes I can remember just as clear when they had to get them with flamethrowers, and that's why they had such a rough time, because they couldn't get to them pillboxes with them 18 feet concrete roofs on them. The bombs wouldn't touch them. They tried to soften it up, but they could only do so much. And then they had the cables along the thing there with helium balloons on them, so the gliders couldn't glide in there low. They had to stay up high, and then it was going in trees and everything else. And we did see a lot of that. The gliders didn't make it in.
Were those the barrage balloons?
Yeah.
Do you remember where you were when the war ended?
3 or 4 miles from Berlin.
How was the word passed down?
Huh?
How did you hear about it being over?
On our radio.
Do you remember what they said?
Something about Hitler gives up, or the troops give up, or something like that. And they told us, you're not allowed to go into Berlin. The Russians done went in, you know, from the other side. And they said, well, let's go on in there and kick their, you know.
Well, I imagine it was a pretty emotional time, wasn't it, when the war ended?
Yep. I think I made it home before Christmas that year, because we had them 6 campaigns, and they give you so many for each campaign, and we had 77 points, and we got to come home first.
6 campaigns. Can you name them?
They're in that book there.
That's okay. Well, the D-Day was probably...
Normandy was one of them.
And then the Battle of Bulge.
Ardennes.
Well, tell me about the Ardennes Forest. What kind of fighting was going on there?
Where?
In the Ardennes?
Yeah.
Tell me about the fighting there.
It was mostly ground. But ground combat we got one for. Well, they're in there. I can't remember all of them.
Do you remember fighting in the forest, though, yourself, or the hedgerows, or the forest, or... I hear it was pretty brutal.
We didn't get off the half track. Like I said, all ours was if they would want something, you know, us to get up there and fire our 50s, and it helped too, because you take 800 rounds a minute coming out of 4 guns. That's 32 rounds a minute going into them woods. And they come out of there surrendering left and right. And then one outfit we got it and sent them all in a field, and we went in there, and this one German officer, he was just got to the front line, and he unbuckled his thing, and his gun dropped to the ground. I got his gun. It was a brand new Walther 32. I brought it home. And I got one of the German flags. It's 60 years old and it's still excellent shape.
What are your thoughts about freedom and what we have in our country and what you fought for, and then the price of freedom? What would you tell a young person today about the price for freedom, to keep our freedoms?
Well, just like what they're doing over Iraq and them places. That's the same difference, but I understand they don't even call that a war. But it's got to be done, I guess, so.
And what about, though, the bloodshed, the price to keep our freedoms? You saw a lot of that in World War II. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it was needed. I think we needed to do it.
What does the American flag mean and represent to you, Joe, as a veteran?
Huh. It means a lot to me. I fly it all the time at home.
Was there a patriotic spirit during World War II when you guys were over there fighting for your country? You guys, you know what I mean? Were you conscious of that, or is it just a matter of survival?
No, we knew it had to be done. We talked about it a lot, that we're there for a reason. And the reason was to keep them from coming to our homeland. Yeah, we talked about it a lot. We didn't say we don't belong there.
When you go through when you go into combat, is there like an adrenaline rush, and then when it's over, there's a letdown, or did you experience that at all, as far as, you know what I mean by that? The excitement of combat, I mean, is there a letdown afterwards when it's over?
I laughed when it was going on. I don't know.
Well, I've never been in combat, so that's why I ask these questions. But after having talked to so many people, I hear some things, and it's interesting to me from your perspective what you're sharing. But how many months were you in combat, approximately?
23 months. I was over there 23 months. And then over in England, we weren't there very long. We got there with the 9th Air Force when they were training and preparing for D-Day. And like I said, they called it off 2 or 3 times, and finally they said they got to go ahead. And then our commander told us we're going in next day. And it was rough. It was rough. But we didn't lose anybody on the beach.
Did you see the first convoy go over to France? I mean, could you see all those ships lined up?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And the planes just flew over, just wave after wave. And the English glider and American gliders. And they didn't make it in.
Did you realize how big that operation was during the time it was happening, or was it afterwards you realized how big it was?
No, afterwards.
Have you ever been back over there?
Mm-mm. I always wondered though if the Americans named that Omaha Beach. I think they did, don't you?
I would assume so.
And there was a beach up the line called Utah, and they didn't have no resistance hardly at all. They got it pretty soft. Not soft, but they didn't have near the opposition as Omaha had.
Why do you think they called it Omaha in Utah?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Well, I always wondered about that.
Are you proud that you're a World War II veteran?
Sure am.
Have people thanked you over the years?
Oh, several.
How do you feel when they do that?
I feel real good. I work at my brother's restaurant, and there'll be people coming in there, and this one guy, he'll stop at the door and salute me before he gets all the way into the restaurant, and he just tells everybody, this guy was in World War II, and they'll come up and say, thank you very much for doing that for us.
Things were different during Vietnam, weren't they, than they were in World War II?
Right. I don't think I could have stood it at the South Pacific. When we got our orders for ETO, I was happy, because that Pacific, But like I said, the SS troops now, they didn't take no prisoners. When them poor guys, paratroopers, went down, I mean, they get them. They wouldn't take no prisoners.
Yeah. That's what I've heard. Yeah.
SS.
Were you around any of the concentration camps?
Oh my! I'm glad you mentioned that. We was at Buchenwald.
Tell me about what you remember.
I remember going through where they kept the people on shelves. That was their hospital. They put like shelves you would build in your basement, and that was their beds. And then we heard that they would take potato peels and stuff and throw them just where they try to reach through the fence, the electrical fence, and try to get them potato peels. And then we heard that rumor about them. And then we seen where they used to gas them and burn them. Yeah, we witnessed that.
So when you went there, were the bodies still around, or they clear them all out, or what?
No, there was a few in there, just skin and bones. And then the word was out that they would take their own people and drain blood out of them for their soldiers that got wounded. Yeah.
So when you went to that concentration camp, were you aware of what was happening, or when you got there, or did you just find out later?
Yeah, we knew what it was all about. It was Buchenwald, I think, that was the name of it. Yeah, we went through there.
Is that a memory that you just probably can't forget that? Can
No.
you? So Hitler was a crazy man.
Yep.
Seems like.
Wanted to rule the world. But he got fooled. But we always said he wasn't killed. That was the rumor out. He never was killed. He flew the coop. When he seen he was defeated, he flew the coop. And he had several makeups look like him. And he wasn't in them woods, but they made you believe he was. Who knows? He might have been, but they said the word was out that he flew the coop.
Have you talked much about your experiences with World War II over the last 60 years?
They always used to ask me different things, and I just didn't want to talk about it.
What bothered you, or you just didn't think they cared, or what? I mean,
No, I knew they wanted to know, but they wanted to know where we went from here, where we went from there, and then my granddaughter here, she got on the internet, and one of the grandsons of one of our officers, he got on the internet, and he said every step we took when we landed on the beach, clear up to Berlin.
is that how you remember it too?
Mm-hmm. But we did a lot of, we just moved around so much. And them 6 campaigns tells you that we wasn't in one place. We just kept moving. And I think their superhighway had 8 lanes on each side, if I remember. They called it a superhighway. And we was involved at the Rhine River when they was building that bridge across there.
Was that the Remagen Bridge, or do you remember? That was something else.
This was the Rhine River. And when we went across that thing with our half-track, I thought sure we was going to go down because they just float. It's a floating bridge. And it was a pretty wide river, that Rhine River. And then they had what they called a Siegfried line, and they were dragon teeth. They were made out of concrete, and the tanks couldn't get through there. They had to call demolition up there to blow a space in there so they could get through there. That was called the Siegfried line.
Yeah, I've heard about that, yeah.
You know, we've seen a lot of that.
I think I probably already asked this, but was there one particular battle that was worse than others that you were involved with in World War II?
I think getting to the 101st Airborne was, getting to them. They were pretty heavily fortified around there, and they couldn't move, the 101st. In fact, I met a guy there at that deal the other day, and I went up and shook his hand. I said, you know, I don't know if you can recall, but, you know, our 6th Armored Division got spearheaded to you guys, and he kind of remembered a little bit of it.
So you said the 101st parachuted in,
Mm-hmm.
and this was the Battle of the Bulge.
Right.
What was there a city they parachuted into, or what? Do you remember?
It was more or less, you know, the outskirts of it, and that's why it was called the Battle of the Bulge. But they were in bad shape when we got to them. Bad shape.
Did you get to see some of them?
Oh, yeah. Their feet was purple from, and how they cured them, the way I understand this, there was snow. They told them, put your feet in the snow. They didn't treat them with heat. You had to treat them with cold. But they were all purple, and their hands were. They didn't have no ammunition, no rations.
Were there thousands of them, hundreds of them, or I mean, there was a lot.
There was a lot of them.
Yeah.
There was a lot of them trapped in there. They run out of ammunition. It was just a matter of time before they rushed them. You know, the Germans rushed them, and we got to them just in time before it happened.
So do you think the German soldier was a good soldier? I mean, they were trained well?
Well, I would have to say the SS was. They were tough to deal with. We didn't come in real combat with them, but we heard rumors about how they wouldn't take paratroopers. And we seen several planes, bombers going towards Berlin, and they were shooting at them, and every once in a while you'd see a big black smoke, and when they got a direct hit on one of them.
Well, do you think Hollywood can really depict what war's like, or it's a whole different story when you're actually doing it?
Well, yeah, I think that Saving Private Ryan, I liked the movie. I seen it. I liked it. But I think they left some out, you know, some of the details that really was there. And I don't think they stressed too much on the pillbox. And that was one of the big deals. Believe me, I've seen them. They could sit there and shoot out of a little square, and not much you could do unless you got up there. I think the flamethrower, you throw 30 feet. They would go out 30 feet, and they just shot it in that hole, and they come out there on fire and everything else.
I'm going to ask you to do one more thing for me, okay?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of my interview, I like to get a salute from the veteran into the camera. From where you're seated, when I tell you, can you give me a salute?
Sure.
Okay, just give me a second here. Okay, Joe, right into the camera. Go ahead. Great. Perfect. Thank you.